Give everyone a moment to get joined here. Hello to everybody who's trickling in. We are just going to give everybody a moment to join and get onto the webinar before we kick things off. We'll give it another minute or two for folks to trickle in before we get going. Looks like we still have a few attendees joining, so we'll just give it a couple more seconds and then we'll jump right into it. Okay, maybe we can go ahead and get started here and let folks join as they can. Thank you everybody for joining the conversation today. Before we get going, just a couple quick housekeeping things. You'll see there's a little portal where you can ask questions throughout the discussion, and we'll save some time at the end of the conversation for Q&A. So please, throughout the conversation, as you're hearing things, don't hesitate to add a few questions, and then at the end we'll try to save as much time as we can to get through those questions that folks are asking. But with that, why don't we just get things started? So by way of introduction, my name is Barry Conklin. I am the Senior Director and Head of Enterprise Sales over here at Foursquare. I think a lot of you are probably already familiar with Foursquare, but more as a consumer app or a check-in app. And we are very proud of our consumer app origins here at Foursquare. In fact, Foursquare City Guide is still going strong out in the market. However, over the last 14 years or so, we've actually undergone a pretty significant pivot as a company. And we've sort of reinvented ourselves as the leading geospatial technology platform. So we saw an opportunity in the market for other businesses to benefit from the unique technology and location data sets that power Foursquare's own consumer apps and owned and operated apps. So today, our tech stack is actually powering location-aware apps and really kind of consumer app experiences for companies across travel and hospitality, entertainment, and social media. And we're helping organizations like that to build things like recommendation engines and personalization into their app experiences. And companies, including folks like Atmosfy, who we'll be talking with today. So we're lucky enough to have the CEO and founder of Atmosfy, Michael Ebel, joining the discussion today. And we're gonna talk to him and hear a little bit about his process of building a really engaging consumer app using Foursquare's technology and data. So before we get into the meat of it, I'll pause and send it over to you, Michael, if you'd like to introduce yourself briefly.
Awesome. Thanks, Barry. Happy to be here. My name is Michael, founder, CEO of Atmosfy. I'm happy to provide a little bit of an intro into my background. Before Atmosfy, I was a global project manager at Meta in their operational machine learning group, which was a really great challenge for a number of years. Got my MBA at Berkeley across the way before that. Did a stint in private equity consulting for Pricewaterhouse in LA for a few years, and was US Air Force captain before that. So a little bit of a varied journey, but all roads lead here, and I'm a proponent that one thing sort of makes you better at the other. So
Yeah, and it'll be great to hear sort of how that journey led into the creation of Atmosfy, but maybe we start there and just sharing with the folks who have joined the webinar, what is Atmosfy? If you can give us the brief overview.
Yeah, definitely. So Atmosfy is a video first discovery platform, so short form video providing recommendations from customers and local tastemakers that are actually there. It enables you to be able to explore your city in real time or go somewhere else in the world to be able to explore in real time. So being able to find that perfect experience, whether it's around you or whether you're traveling. And we leverage AI to be able to power those recommendations based on a ton of different inputs, right? To be able to help match you with the perfect experience.
Yeah, and how long, and it's a relatively new partnership here, but how long have you been kind of using Foursquare technology and data to power Atmosfy?
Yeah, so we've been working with Foursquare about the last 8 months now, which has obviously been fantastic in providing just great key and critical functionality into the product that provides a richer user experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, totally. And I've had the opportunity to play with Atmosfy a little bit, and I downloaded the app. It's really fun and can suck you in. But curious to hear what went into kind of the decision to build Atmosfy. Why did you decide that this was something you wanted to build?
Yeah, it's really integral to our company's sort of DNA. So in my sort of varied career path, I was a bartender for a number of years when I was an undergrad. And I think, the initial sort of genesis of the idea was that, observing that, the review landscape can be hard on local businesses. I mean, they live in fear of sort of the one-star review, but it's a really tough ecosystem for them. Oftentimes the deck is sort of stacked against them because, consumer psychology dictates that if you have a great experience, a lot of people don't really do anything. And if you have a bad experience, then, folks are sometimes more likely to be able to leave that online. And then sort of pair that with the fact that we're kind of wired to remember negative information more than one, right? Like sort of like that's 7, positive experiences to cancel out one negative. And you end up with an ecosystem that's often, highly negative and often with people more likely to remember that. And so that just kind of like stuck with me as like, is there a different way to be able to power experience recommendations? And I think when I was at Meta, certainly saw video as a medium to be able to sort of revolutionize that space, right? I think the linchpin, though, for sort of launching it was actually during the pandemic and really observing in San Francisco at the time, as was the case everywhere, how hard it was on local businesses trying to survive and stay open and indoor, outdoor dining and masks and everything that was. And so the thought at the time was, if we could get people to band together and take a video and say, hey, come on down, this place is still open, come support them. Wouldn't that be a great way to be able to help out? And so it was a mission that, that resonated with a lot of folks, and we're now live in 150 countries and 10,000 cities, and have 1 million local businesses on the platform, and and scaling. And so it was terrific to see that sort of response to the mission, and it's still, it powers everything we do today and how we think about the product.
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly fun scrolling through it. You get the positivity when you scroll through the videos, and it makes you want to go visit one of those restaurants. So it's a really cool experience. I'm sure building it was not easy. So coming up with the idea to build it is great. What were the kind of walk us through the process? Like, what were the really big milestones, and what did you learn along the way as you kind of went through the process of building Atmosfy?
Yeah, it's a great question. Certainly a journey. I mean, I think like any founder in the early days, you've got an idea, right? And you've got to get it on paper. What does this look like? And some early mock-ups and some early wireframes, right? I think, getting something out there that's your MVP and getting that initial market validation, getting an alpha, getting a beta, and then you've got something out there, right? You've got something that like sort of fundamentally works. And I think the next big steps become, how do you think about powering the ecosystem, the production, the consumption, right? So people posting videos and people enjoying videos, and those things they're often chicken and egg problems, right? Because you need people, for people to want to post, to enjoy the videos, and vice versa. And so I think as you think about sort of bifurcating that ecosystem and saying, how can we really get people excited to post? How can we get people excited to consume that content and deliver back to those folks? And then a process of iteration, right, that never ends. It's a labor of love, and we're iterating today as much as we were a year ago, right, continuing to make that product experience better. So I think those are certainly some of the key milestones that kind of jump out at me.
Yeah, definitely. And at Foursquare, one of the things we hear a lot in talking to other app builders and founders is this concept, and you've brought it up a couple times. Obviously, video is very important to Atmosfy, but also recommendations and being able to serve up that relevant content to your users. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of recommendation engines and how that works in Atmosfy?
Yeah, I mean, the recommendation engine, it's really interesting sort of what we're doing and how we're kind of tackling it, right? Because you're kind of layering utility on top of social, right? In terms of being able to deliver those recommendations in a way that's meaningful for folks. How do you think about serving up those recommendations in a way that gives people enough trust so that they see a cool video, but is that enough to convert them to want to go to the place? And how do you think about layering different capabilities within the product to provide an experience that's not just an entertaining video that you like, but actually something that is going to influence your decision making either in advance or sometimes in real time as people live up to the product. And this is happening now, and this is around the corner from me, a couple of blocks away. And so we're constantly thinking about how we inject trust components into the product to be able to give you confidence that this is an experience that you want to do.
Yeah, definitely. And how did you go through the process when building the app? And obviously, it was built when we first engaged, but how did you think about getting Foursquare involved? What kind of research did you do when you're thinking about bringing in a location provider and partner into Atmosfy?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a huge decision for us. We looked at a lot of providers. At the end of the day, we're looking, for additional trust points, right? Rich data to be able to pair with our AI, to be able to pair with our user-generated content, to provide the user an experience with which they feel that they've got enough information to make a decision. And Foursquare certainly had that, right? And I think there's that component. And then obviously, the geolocation, the really cool stuff that we can do with places trending around you and all of that, and being able to leverage, Foursquare's infrastructure was of course certainly attractive to us, right? Because we're able to take what we're doing and essentially supercharge it with the infrastructure that that Foursquare provided.
Yeah, that's great. And so far, what has the consumer response been like to Atmosfy? What are you hearing from the users? What's the feedback been from the market since you've been seeing it grow?
Yeah, I mean, I'm overwhelmed with how positive the response has been. We sort of think of the response in sort of stakeholders, right? So from the user perspective, I think, people are, videos exploding. That's not a secret, right? But people are excited and ready for a new way to be able to discover experiences, the positive nature of the platform, the social nature of the platform, and just a unique happenstance way to discover, or even if you're searching and being able to search against video like that, has been immensely sort of popular for folks, right? And the response has been great. I think on the creator side, we work with a ton of creators. It's been a great tool for them to be able to engage with their followers in a completely different way. The content that you see on Atmosfy is often, we sort of hear a couple different adjectives, but unvarnished, authentic in the moment, we hear a lot, right? In terms of a new way to be able to think about posting authentic content in the moment, and being able to give, their existing follower base, if they're a large scale creator, right, a different way to interact. Businesses has been super positive as well. If you think about the average mom and pop local business, right? They're trying to get the word out. They're competing in a world that is now video first, and they were sort of struggling when things were sort of like picture based, right? On like an Instagram, and they're not photographers either. But now that challenge for them is supercharged, right? Because now it's like, oh, we've got to create viral videos to be able to, get out there and kind of get the word out. And so being able to work with local creators and boost that content and be able to sort of give them the gift of positive content that they can turn around and be able to use, right, to get folks in the door has been huge. And then had a lot of great, partnerships and outreach with brands that are excited about geolocal intent to purchase, right? And being able to leverage the platform to be able to reach people in specific markets that are actively deciding, where to eat and drink or stay or travel to. And so it's been, it's been a remarkably positive experience, but certainly a journey and a long ways to go as we continue scaling.
Yeah, certainly. And when you think of the partnership with Foursquare and the role we play, do you see any areas where your experience has been that the Foursquare data or tech has helped kind of elevate some of that experience for whether any of those stakeholders, the creator, the user, the brand, any of that?
I mean, I think all of them, right? Because as we again take, the great content that's coming in and, the AI that's powering it, and think about being able to leverage the massive infrastructure that is Foursquare from a POI information, from a geolocal standpoint, from a real-time standpoint, as we're thinking about doing some of the fancier stuff of, what's trending around you, that impacts all of that ecosystem, right? And so that was really one of our key decision points when we partnered with Foursquare.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like from this discussion, it's all been easy, no challenges along the way, but I'm sure you did encounter a couple potholes in coming up with the idea and developing it. So it'd be interesting to hear your perspective. What were some of those challenges as you kind of embarked on the journey of building Atmosfy that you encountered?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's startup land, right? Nothing is as easy as it sounds.
Yeah.
And it's been an iterative journey. And I think, I kind of talked about earlier, it's a labor of love, right? We know that video is the future broadly, but how you give folks maximum utility and what does that experience look like that's not just entertaining, that's not just addictive, but, if we're doing our jobs right, it inspires you to want to visit that place, right? That's our mission statement: share, inspire, support. And so what is that right user experience? What are those right trust points? How do we think about orienting people into the product that, can look and feel like a social product, to be able to help them find their next experience locally or globally? And that's qualitative research, it's quantitative research, it's identifying, pain points. People are often poor predictors, even of what they say they want and then what they do in real life. And so matching that up against real data, and that's something that sort of never ends. I mean, we're constantly improving that. Certainly was getting it off the ground in the early days, obviously was a more intense version of that. But I think from an iteration standpoint, that's, we will continue to do that because the work is almost never done.
Yeah, certainly. So that kind of brings up the natural follow-on from that. I'm sure on the call today or on the webinar, we have other founders or other folks who are looking to either improve upon or build a location-aware, really engaging app, or maybe build some recommendation engine into an app experience that they're working on. From your experiences, building Atmosfy, what advice do you have for those folks? What are the things you would recommend that they do or look out for in their own company?
Yeah, absolutely. I can certainly speak to kind of the video. I think a lot of products, as we talk to a lot of brands that we're working with, it is, people are aware of the power of video, the surge that we're seeing across all platforms, and a lot of established brands and, and new startups figuring out ways, what is sort of their video strategy to be able to get that off the ground. And, when you think about that and we talk with brands, or I talk with other founders, I encourage them to sort of think about, it's almost not so much how do we integrate video is the right question of how do we integrate creators, right? So we have an explosion of creators that was, sort of typified by large scale creators. And now we're seeing, more nano, and we're seeing more organic, and we're seeing Gen Z that, an overwhelmingly large amount of them are interested in becoming creators, right? And so as we think about the trends that are happening in the ecosystem, continuing to see the unbundling of social, hyper-local being another big one, and everybody excited that their video can somehow influence daily purchases, right? So it's almost like, what is our creator strategy? And there's so much there, right? Because there now is more creators than ever. And are you looking for micro creators? Are you looking for creators that want, to focus on authenticity versus large scale productions, right? And so thinking about who they are, where they are, and then ultimately how you can deliver value to them, right? Because this is a livelihood for a lot of folks. It's a hobby for others, but at the end of the day, things like monetization, things like helping them grow their brand, helping them establish genuine connections with their followers, all of that is sort of key to being able to attract and maintain. And I think if you find what works for your brand, then the rest becomes, not easy, but certainly more straightforward to be able to think about how we can generate that production. I think the UX and the UI of video is much more straightforward, right? We all have a sense of how that could look and how it could work, but the content is the tough part, right? And so I think I encourage brands and other founders to sort of think of it through that lens.
Yeah, that's great. And I think we are right at the time where we had planned to switch over into questions from the audience. So I want to make sure we leave a little bit of time to address those. But Before we jump into it, anything or closing kind of statements we didn't get to that you wanted to cover, Michael, before we jump into the Q&A portion?
No, I mean, a shameless plug, right? To download Atmosfy and, support local businesses. Every video really helps them as they're looking to market, and, and you're adding to a great community of folks. So that's my shameless plug, but happy to have, gotten a chance to talk about Atmosfy. So.
Yeah, certainly. And it's been really fun being involved from a Foursquare perspective and just powering the recommendation engine portion and seeing our tech that we used over the years to build our own owned and operated apps be used to power other really interesting and new kind of cutting edge apps like Atmosfy. So looking forward to continuing the partnership. And with that, I want to switch over into some questions from the audience. So I have a few queued up here. The first one I see, Michael, appears to be for you, of course, and it is, surely many businesses are appreciative of Atmosfy for driving more traffic. Have any new partnerships or business opportunities arisen as a result of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Without getting into to the names, I think we've been, continually approached by larger and larger brands that are excited to be able to leverage not only the positive ecosystem, not only like the geo intent to purchase and sort of the Gen Z, that sort of ecosystem, right? It's really the confluence of those things that is really, really attractive for folks because, again, that geo intent to purchase is not necessarily available even on larger scale platforms, right? Where everyone is actively deciding where to be able to eat and drink. And so that opens up partnerships, not only for us, right? But as we think about local businesses, being able to partner with creators, as we think about brands, being able to partner with local businesses, right? So there's a lot of different optionality that comes with being able to be, a hyper local product in the social space that has video attached to it.
Yeah, that's great. And then we have one more from the audience, it looks like. So why did you choose the name Atmosfy? That's actually a good question. I don't think I've asked you that one either. Where did the name come from? And is there deeper meaning to the name? Any other names that didn't make the cut as you were going through the process of naming your product?
There was more than a few names that didn't make the cut. Some of them are escaping me now, but I can assure you they were not good. Atmosfy was, capturing the atmosphere of a place, what video sort of does, right? It enables you to be able to understand what the ambiance and what the atmosphere looked like. And so when we shortened that, we came up with Atmosfy, but there were some terrible contenders before that for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it looks like we actually do have one more that just trickled in. And it's just, Michael, how were you able to attract creators in the early days? Did you have a specific process you used or anything that you can share on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of along the lines of the advice that I was, that I often give to, to brands or founders that are looking to be able to work with creators. I think it's all about determining what is the value that you can sort of deliver for them. It's kind of like the why should they care, and it's very, very different depending on who you're talking to, right? Depending if it's, a large scale creator that this is their livelihood, or someone that's, that's posting because they love it and it's a hobby for them, and everything in between, right? And so there is no silver bullet for what works for everybody. I would encourage folks to think about what in their brand is going to resonate with these creators and how can they deliver value to be able to attract folks to not just initially post content, but stick around, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that does it on the Q&A portion of the discussion, and so I think that's our time. And Michael, I want to thank you especially for joining and having this discussion. I think really informative, and I learned a lot just hearing you talk about the process of building Atmosfy. So all of you who tuned in on the webinar as well, thank you for joining us. If you'd like to kind of review any of the content after the fact, we will be posting this to the website. And for those of you who we didn't get to your questions, we'll make sure to answer those after the fact as well. So again, thank you everybody for joining. Michael, thank you for sharing a little bit about Atmosfy, and looking forward to following up. Thank you all.
Awesome, thank you.